Hey guys, it's COREROSS, and today we're testing and breaking down the Glaive-12, the new secondary slug shotgun coming to Rainbow Six Siege. And of course, this is currently only available to Denary, the new operator, but I've got a feeling this might end up on a few other operators in the future, kinda like how the super shorty gets handed around to different operators over time. And with this being a slug shotgun, it does do some half decent damage, but nothing compared to something like the Boss G, doing a total of 63 damage to the body and 44 to the limbs, and this starts to drop off after just 5 meters. And then it's got full destruction for sight setup, which means it destroys the wooden beams in soft walls, meaning you can make full rotates. It's got relatively controllable recoil, but of course it only holds 4 rounds at a time in its quad barrels, but the reload time for it is actually quite fast, as it reloads all those barrels in one go. And it certainly does look cool as well. However, this is definitely not a particularly lethal weapon, and the main reason for that is its damage drop-off. So within 5 meters, you can eliminate a player with simply 2 shots. However, at this range, Daenerys SMGs will get the job done a lot better, but it is nice to have as a backup weapon. And then as you push out over that 5 meter range, your damage drop-off gets more and more severe. And there's also what appears to be a very deliberate choice here as well, as this weapon does not have limb penetration. This means if you shoot someone, let's say with the Boss G, in the arm, but the chest is behind the arm, the enemy will take chest damage. However, with this secondary slug firing shotgun, the enemy will only take limb damage. And with limb damage being nerfed in the previous season, this can make the damage you're doing feel very inconsistent, because you might be hitting with a couple of shots at 5 meter range that looks like it's hitting the chest, but if their arms are up in front of them holding their weapon, you might end up not doing as much damage as you think. And with this weapon only having 4 shots per reload, it might end up getting you eliminated. And even though that's double what the Boss G has, at least the Boss G has that significantly higher damage and damage drop off to go with it. And then of course the other ability this weapon has is its destruction, which has been buffed during the test server phase. Initially it had very weak destruction with quite small holes, but it looks like they've gone and bumped this up significantly in size. However, this is not a weapon you should rely on for sight setup. This is perfect for Daenerys and his gadget and doing setups with it. However, doing full setups with this thing is just not possible. The main issue is it does not have enough rounds, and its destruction at range, even simply shooting the top of a soft wall, becomes very, very weak. If you compare this to, say, the Bailiff is 10 times better, and you'll still have some ammunition left after you've done full sight setup with it. And that's overall the actual conclusion about this weapon in total, is that it's not that great at anything. It's not great for killing players, it's not great for sight setup, but it's a nice backup weapon that has decent destruction and is very accurate. And it's also got perfectly adequate destruction, especially for Daenerys and how his gadget works, meaning that essentially this is a perfect weapon for him to be comboed with. I would just say if you're within 5 meters of the enemy, his SMGs will do the job a lot better. But of course, if your mag's empty, switching to this is not a bad choice. And I'm also going to put forward a prediction here for probably a year or 2 into the future, and that is that a couple of attackers, probably 2 in total, will end up getting this weapon as a secondary option. So yeah, overall the Glaive-12 here is a relatively decent weapon. It doesn't excel at anything, but it also doesn't do anything particularly bad either. And its big weakness is of course the limb penetration, reducing the overall damage that it puts out to the point of where you might need that extra shot or 2 to take down the enemy. And of course with the limited magazine, that might end up getting you killed. But anyway guys, that is a look at the new secondary slug firing shotgun in Rainbow Six Siege, the first of its kind.